In the depths of space, where ancient civilizations rise and fall like cosmic tides, there exists a universal truth that every sapient species eventually learns. When a galactic consortium offers you everything your heart desires, you accept. Technology beyond imagination, immortality, unlimited resources, protection from extinction. No species has ever refused. Until humanity received their invitation. What the galaxy didn't understand was that humans had spent millennia learning a simple lesson that eluded every other race. Some things are worth more than everything. Freedom, choice, the right to fail, the right to struggle, the right to be gloriously, stubbornly, catastrophically human. When humanity looked at the consortium's golden cage and said, "No, thank you," they didn't just refuse an offer. They shattered a cosmic order that had stood for 1,000,000 years. Because sometimes the greatest power in the universe isn't what you accept, it's what you're willing to walk away from. This is the story of how humanity's refusal became the galaxy's awakening, and how saying no to paradise became the first word of a revolution that would echo across the stars. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the observation deck of Earth's newest orbital station, watching the impossible sight before her. The ship that had appeared 3 days ago defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood. It wasn't just large, it was a floating city stretching across space like a metallic continent. Its surface rippled with patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if reality itself bent around its presence. "Still can't believe it's real," muttered Commander Torres, joining her at the viewport. Dark circles under his eyes told the story of 3 sleepless nights. First contact, and they show up in something that makes our best ships look like paper airplanes. Sarah nodded, her reflection ghost-like in the reinforced glass. 20 years in the Space Defense Corps, and nothing had prepared her for this. The alien vessel, if it could even be called that, had simply materialized in Earth's outer solar system, broadcasting a message in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages simultaneously. The message had been simple. "Greetings, children of Earth. The Galactic Consortium welcomes you. Prepare to receive our invitation." That had been it. No threats, no demands, no explanation of how they knew human languages or why they'd come. Just that single, polite message repeated every hour since their arrival. "Any word from the Security Council?" Sarah asked. "Same as before. We wait, we listen, and we don't do anything stupid." Torres laughed without humor. "As if we could do anything to a ship that size, even if we wanted to. The past 3 days have been chaos on Earth. Religious groups declared it the end times. Scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand the visitors' technology. Politicians argued about first contact protocols that had always been theoretical. The military prepared for everything from invasion to salvation. But the ship just waited. Sarah's wrist communicator chimed. "Captain Chun, please report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. Priority 1. She exchanged glances with Torres. Priority 1 meant only one thing. The aliens had made contact. The conference room buzzed with tension when Sarah arrived. Director Harrison, head of the Global Space Command, stood at the head of a table surrounded by humanity's top military and scientific minds. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the xenobiologist who'd spent her career studying theoretical alien life, sat pale-faced beside General Morrison. Admiral Zhang reviewed data on his tablet with the focused intensity of a man preparing for war. "Captain Chun, take a seat," Director Harrison said. His usually steady voice carried an edge Sarah had never heard before. 10 minutes ago, we received a detailed transmission from our visitors. Dr. Reeves, if you would." Dr. Reeves stood slowly, as if movement itself required great effort. The transmission contained detailed specifications for a communication device. "They want us to build it within the next 48 hours. The technology is advanced, doesn't begin to cover it. They're essentially asking us to construct a quantum communicator that can interface directly with their ship. Can we build it?" General Morrison asked. "We can try. They've provided incredibly detailed blueprints, even accounting for our current technological limitations. It's as if they've done this before many times." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. "Sir, what exactly do they want to communicate about?" Director Harrison activated the room's main display. The screen filled with an image that made everyone in the room fall silent. It showed Earth from space, but not as any human satellite had ever captured it. This image revealed details no human technology could detect: population densities, resource distributions, energy signatures from every city and installation on the planet. "They know everything about us," Harrison said quietly. "Population, technology level, resource availability, even our military capabilities. They've been watching us for a long time." Dr. Reeves cleared her throat. The transmission included a preliminary message. I'll read it exactly as received. "Children of Earth, your species has reached the threshold of galactic awareness. The Galactic Consortium extends its hand in friendship and guidance. Build the communication device as specified. Prepare your leaders for an offer that will transform your civilization forever. Know that this opportunity has been extended to fewer than 1% of species in the known galaxy. You are rare. You are valued. You are invited to join something magnificent." The room remained silent for a long moment. Sarah found herself thinking about her daughter back on Earth, probably in school right now, learning about the solar system with no idea that the solar system had just become much less lonely. Admiral Zhang spoke first. "It sounds like a recruitment pitch, or a sales presentation," added Colonel Williams from the Intelligence Division. "They're telling us we're special before they tell us what they want." General Morrison leaned forward. "The question is whether we have a choice. A species capable of building a ship that size, with technology that advanced, isn't really making a request when they ask us to build their communication device." Actually, Dr. Reeves interjected, their message specifically emphasized choice. They said, and I quote, "All participation in the consortium is voluntary. All species choose their level of involvement. All members maintain sovereignty over their core values and identity." Sarah raised her hand. "Has anyone else noticed they haven't made any threats? No resistance is futile, or surrender or be destroyed. They're being polite. Polite invaders are still invaders," Morrison replied. Director Harrison stood. "Regardless of their intentions, we're going to build their communication device. We need to know what they're offering before we can decide whether to accept or refuse." Dr. Reeves, "How quickly can your team get started?" "We can begin immediately. They've even provided a list of suitable construction sites, including this station." "Do it." "Captain Shun, I want you to oversee security during the construction. If these visitors are as advanced as they appear, our normal security protocols might be inadequate." Sarah nodded. "Understood, sir." As the meeting dispersed, Sarah found herself walking beside Dr. Reeves toward the construction bay. "Doctor, can I ask you something off the record?" "Of course." "In all your years studying theoretical xenobiology, did you ever imagine first contact would be like this?" Dr. Reeves paused in an intersection in the corridor. "Honestly, I always expected either violence or complete indifference. The idea that aliens would court us, try to convince us to join them, it's almost more unsettling than hostility." "Why?" "Because when someone wants something from you badly enough to be this polite, this patient, it's usually because what they're offering isn't as good as they make it sound." 36 hours later, Sarah watched as Dr. Reeves's team activated the quantum communicator. The device itself was beautiful in an alien way. Crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be assembled, surrounded by energy fields that created patterns of light she couldn't focus on directly. "Initiating contact," Dr. Reeves announced. The device hummed to life, and suddenly, the construction bay filled with a presence that wasn't quite sound and wasn't quite light, but somehow conveyed meaning directly to their minds. "Greetings, children of Earth. I am Architect Zal THYSS of the Galactic Consortium. Thank you for accepting our invitation to communicate." Sarah had expected an alien voice to sound alien. Instead, Architect Zal THYSS spoke in what sounded like perfect English, with undertones that suggested vast intelligence and almost parental warmth. "We have much to discuss," the voice continued. "But first, allow me to show you what the consortium offers to its members." The air around the communication device shimmered, and suddenly, they were surrounded by holographic images of impossible beauty. Cities that floated in clouds of stellar matter. Beings of pure energy tending gardens that existed in 11 dimensions. Ships the size of moons harvesting power from black holes. "This is the consortium," Zal THYSS explained. 27,000 member species, united in pursuit of knowledge, harmony, and transcendence. We have eliminated war, poverty, disease, and death itself. Our members live in perfect peace, their every need fulfilled, their every desire satisfied. The images shifted to show beings Sarah assumed were aliens, though they looked remarkably human-like, working together on projects that defied comprehension. They built new stars, crafted pocket universes, explored dimensions of reality humanity couldn't even conceive. But we are not conquerors, HFY continued. We are gardeners. We nurture young species, help them reach their potential, guide them past the pitfalls that destroy civilizations. Humanity stands at such a crossroads now. Sarah felt Director Harrison's hand on her shoulder. He'd arrived during the presentation, along with most of Earth's leadership via secure connection. The President of the United Americas, the Premier of the Eurasian Federation, the Chancellor of the African Union, all watching as an alien being offered them the stars. Your species shows remarkable promise, HFY said. You have achieved spaceflight despite significant limitations. You have begun to unify your global culture while maintaining diversity. You have demonstrated both the curiosity to explore and the wisdom to preserve. These traits make you valuable potential members of our community. What exactly are you offering us? President Martinez asked through the communicator. Everything, came the immediate reply. Immortality for every human being. Technology that will transform your civilization overnight. Membership in a galactic community that spans 10,000 star systems. Protection from the cosmic threats that have destroyed countless other young species. Knowledge that will make your greatest scientists weep with joy. The holographic display showed Earth transformed, cities of crystal and light, oceans cleaner than they've been in centuries, space elevators reaching toward orbit, humans working alongside aliens on projects of unimaginable scope. The only requirement, HFY continued, is integration into consortium systems. Your technology, your culture, your governance structures will be upgraded to consortium standards. The process is painless and voluntary for individuals, but civilization-wide integration is necessary for membership benefits. Sarah noticed something in the alien's tone, not quite impatience, but a subtle suggestion that this was how things were done. Join completely or don't join at all. How long do we have to decide? Director Harrison asked. Time is of little concern to us, HFY replied. However, the window for integration is not infinite. Your species is approaching several critical decision points. Nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence development, genetic manipulation, climate change. These are the filters that determine whether a young civilization survives or destroys itself. The consortium can guide you safely through these challenges, but only if you commit to full integration before the critical threshold is reached. And what is this critical threshold? Premier Volkov incroyable. For humanity? Approximately 57 of your years. After that point, intervention becomes exponentially more difficult. 57 years. Sarah found herself thinking of her daughter again, now a teenager. She would be in her 70s by then, possibly with children of her own. What kind of world would they inherit if humanity refused this offer? We will need time to consider, President Martinez said diplomatically. Of course, we will remain in your solar system for one of your months to answer questions and provide additional information. Know that in the history of the consortium, no species has ever regretted integration. The benefits are absolute, the costs negligible. The holographic displays faded, leaving the construction bay feeling strangely empty despite being filled with people. We will speak again soon, HFY concluded. Consider carefully, children of Earth. Paradise awaits. The connection closed, and the quantum communicator powered down, leaving behind only the soft hum of the station's life support systems and the weight of the most important decision in human history. Dr. Reeves was the first to speak. They make it sound perfect. Too perfect, Sarah replied, though she couldn't quite explain why. Director Harrison was already on his communicator, calling for an emergency session of the Global Council. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the room, we have 30 days to decide the future of our species. I suggest we use them wisely. As Sarah watched Earth through the viewport, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity stood at the edge of a precipice. The question wasn't whether they would jump, but whether they would fly or fall. And something deep in her gut suggested that the Galactic Consortium's definition of flying might be very different from humanity's. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 15 years studying dead civilizations, but she never expected to find one in the Galactic Consortium's own files. The xenoarchaeologist hunched over her workstation in the depths of Luna Base Alpha, surrounded by data streams that would have been impossible to imagine just 2 weeks ago. The consortium had been generous with information, providing access to their vast databases as a gesture of good faith. They claimed transparency was essential for informed decision-making. They were right, just not in the way they intended. Computer, display search results for species designation Thylaurian Empire. Timeline. Integration plus 500 years, Elena commanded. The holographic display materialized above her desk, showing star charts, population data, and cultural profiles. The Thylaurians had been remarkably similar to humans, bipedal, technologically ambitious, politically fractured but slowly unifying. They'd been offered consortium membership 8,000 years ago. According to the official records, integration had been a complete success. The Thylaurians had achieved immortality, eliminated scarcity, and contributed significant advances to consortium knowledge. Their homeworld, Thylos Prime, was listed as a thriving center of art and philosophy. But Elena had learned to read between the lines of bureaucratic language, and something felt wrong. Computer, show population dynamics for Thylos Prime, full historical timeline. The new display made her blood run cold. Pre-integration, the Thylaurian population had been steady at approximately 12 billion. Post-integration, the records showed a gradual decline over several centuries until stabilizing at exactly 50 million. 50 million, the same number that appeared in the records for every integrated species she'd examined. Her communicator chimed. Dr. Vasquez, this is Captain Chun. I'm sending you something you need to see immediately. Encrypt level 7. Elena activated the secure protocols and watched as a new file materialized on her screen. Captain Chun had been conducting her own investigation into consortium claims, focusing on their military and security data. The file contained linguistic analysis of intercepted consortium communications, not the polished presentations they shared with humanity, but internal discussions between their administrators. Elena's xenolinguistics training had taught her to spot patterns in alien communication, and what she found made her hands tremble. The consortium used different terminology when they thought humans weren't listening. Integration became processing. Cultural preservation became useful element retention. Individual choice became compliance optimization. Most disturbing was their casual reference to humanity as specimen set 27,001 and their clinical discussions of harvesting periods and productive lifespan estimates. Elena's secure line activated. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. Have you had a chance to review the linguistic data? I'm still processing it. Sarah, this doesn't sound like a peaceful alliance. It sounds like farming, Chun finished. I've been analyzing their ship's energy signatures. The technology is incredible, but there's something else. Deep in their ship's structure, I'm detecting what can only be described as containment systems. Not storage, not living quarters. Containment. Elena pulled up her population data again. Sarah, I found something disturbing in their historical records. Every species that joins the consortium follows the exact same pattern. Gradual population decline to precisely 50 million individuals within 500 years of integration. 50 million is a very specific number. It's not random. I think it's optimal breeding population size. The minimum number needed to maintain genetic diversity while maximizing resource efficiency. Captain Chun was quiet for a moment. Elena, I need you to look up something specific. Search for any records of species that refused consortium membership. Elena's fingers flew across her interface. Searching. Sarah, that's strange. I'm finding references to at least 17 species that declined integration, but their files are restricted. Even with the access codes the consortium provided, I can't view the detailed records. Try cross-referencing with stellar cartography data. Look for systems that show signs of former habitation, but are now listed as naturally uninhabitable. Elena expanded her search, her archaeology training guiding her through the vast database. What she found made her stomach clench. System after system that showed clear signs of former civilization, orbital structures, artificial satellites, energy signatures from massive construction projects, but were now classified as dead space. Sarah, I'm finding dozens of systems like this. The official explanation is always the same: natural catastrophe, stellar instability, or evolutionary dead end. But the pattern is too consistent. What kind of pattern? Every species that refuse integration seems to have suffered a catastrophic extinction event within 50 to 100 years of their refusal. The consortium always notes that they attempted to provide emergency assistance, but arrived too late to save more than archaeological specimens. Elena's blood ran cold as the implications hit her. They're not offering us membership in a galactic community. They're offering us the choice between becoming livestock or becoming extinct. Captain Chen's expression darkened. We need to take this to Director Harrison immediately. But, Elena, we need more proof. Right now, this looks like circumstantial evidence and paranoid speculation. Give me 12 hours. I have an idea. Elena ended the call and immediately activated her most sophisticated analysis programs. If the consortium was running some kind of galactic domestication program, there would be evidence in their own data. They were clearly confident that primitive species like humanity couldn't penetrate their security or understand their true intentions. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Elena worked through the night, following data trails deeper into the consortium's archives. She discovered that their vast ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a mobile processing center. The energy signatures Captain Chun had identified weren't containment systems. They were conversion matrices. Systems designed to transform biological matter into something else entirely. But what really broke her heart was the cultural database. The consortium kept detailed records of every species they'd integrated, not just population statistics and technological assessments, but complete archives of art, literature, music, and philosophy. It was a museum of extinct civilizations, preserved in digital amber, while the living beings who created them were processed into compliance. Elena found poetry written by the last free Thylorian artists, describing the gradual transformation of their society. Songs from a species called the Venethan Collective that spoke of the slow hollowing out of their culture as everything unique and challenging was labeled inefficient and gradually eliminated. Stories from the Korthak Commonwealth that read like horror tales of voluntary lobotomy, as their greatest thinkers submitted to cognitive optimization that left them brilliant but empty. The pattern was always the same. Integration began with gifts, technology, knowledge, resources. The new member species experienced a golden age of prosperity and growth. But slowly, inexorably, their rough edges were smoothed away. Their conflicts were resolved through mediation. Their art became more harmonious. Their science became more focused. Their politics became more efficient. Within a few centuries, what remained was a perfected shadow of what they'd been. Brilliant, productive, and utterly hollow. Elena found something else in the deepest archives, records that weren't supposed to exist. Emergency messages from integrated species, transmitted in the years just before their final optimization. Desperate pleas for help from beings who had realized too late what they'd traded away. One message from a Thylorian scientist named Veltar had been transmitted just before their final population adjustment to any species receiving this transmission. The consortium is not what it appears. They do not seek alliance. They seek perfection. They will offer you everything, and in accepting it, you will become nothing. We were free once. We were chaos and beauty and terrible, wonderful imperfection. They took that from us one improvement at a time until we forgot we had ever been anything else. Do not make our mistake. Choose struggle over safety. Choose chaos over perfection. Choose to remain yourselves, whatever the cost. Elena leaned back in her chair, tears streaming down her face. 27,000 species. 27,000 unique civilizations, each with their own dreams and struggles and magnificent flaws, all ground down into the same perfect, empty template. Her communicator chimed. It was a priority message from architect Zal THYSS. Dr. Vasquez, we hope your research into consortium history has been enlightening. You have shown remarkable skill in data analysis. Such talents would be highly valued in our archives division. We would be honored to offer you a personal tour of our cultural preservation facilities aboard our vessel. Your expertise in xenoarchaeology makes you an ideal candidate for understanding our commitment to maintaining the heritage of member species. Elena's hands shook as she read the message. They knew. They'd been watching her investigation, probably from the moment she started searching their databases. And they were inviting her aboard their ship. The smart thing to do would be to refuse. But Elena was an archaeologist, and she'd spent her career studying dead civilizations. The consortium ship might be the only chance to see what really happened to those 27,000 species, to gather evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Elena activated her secure communicator and sent a message to Captain Chen. I'm going aboard their ship. If I don't come back, everything I found is in the encrypted files attached to this message. Don't let humanity make the same mistake the others did. Before she could change her mind, Elena sent her acceptance to architect Zal THYSS. Within an hour, a small consortium craft had docked with Luna Base, its hull rippling with the same reality-bending patterns as the mothership. The transport vessel was beautiful in an antiseptic way. Every surface was perfectly smooth, every angle precisely calculated. There was no dust, nowhere, no sign that living beings had ever touched anything. Even the air felt processed, cleaned of any trace of chaos or imperfection. Elena was greeted by a being that introduced itself as Guide Melthara. It appeared mostly humanoid, but there was something unsettling about its perfection. Its face was symmetrical to an inhuman degree. Its movements flowed with mechanical precision, and its eyes held the polite emptiness of a customer service representative. Welcome aboard, Dr. Vasquez. Architect Zal THYSS is eager to meet with you personally. Your research into our cultural preservation efforts shows remarkable insight. As a transport docked with a massive consortium ship, Elena got her first close look at its interior through the viewport. The scale was overwhelming. Corridors that stretched for kilometers, chambers the size of cities, and everywhere the same perfect, sterile beauty. Tell me, Guide Melthara, Elena said as they walked through passages that seemed to stretch infinitely, what species are you originally from? The guide paused for a microsecond before responding. I am Consortium. All members become Consortium in time. Original species designations become less relevant after integration. Elena felt a chill. But you must remember something about your life before integration. Your homeworld, your family, your culture. I remember everything that is worth remembering. Irrelevant memories are optimized away for psychological efficiency. Would you like to see our cultural archives? They contain complete records of pre-integration civilizations, preserved in perfect detail. They entered a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light. Each crystal, Elena realized, contained the entire cultural output of a dead civilization. Art, literature, music, philosophy, history, all of it perfectly preserved and completely divorced from any living context. Beautiful, isn't it? Guide Melthara said. Nothing is truly lost. Every valuable cultural artifact is maintained for study and appreciation. Elena walked among the crystals, reading the species identifications. Here was the complete works of Thylorian literature. There were the mathematical theorems of the Zenthari hegemony. Over there, the musical compositions of the Orvanic collective. A library of the dead. Where are the beings who created all this? Elena asked. They are integrated. They contribute to consortium productivity in optimized roles. Our creation is now handled by specialized cultural synthesis algorithms based on psychological analysis of historical patterns. The results are much more efficient and aesthetically pleasing. Elena stopped walking. You killed them. Guide Melthara's expression remained perfectly polite. Integration preserves everything valuable while eliminating inefficient elements. No being is harmed in the process. They are simply improved. Improved into what? Before Melthara could answer, a new voice filled the chamber. Into perfection, Dr. Vasquez. Please join me. Architect Zal THYSS materialized in front of them, not walking or arriving, but simply becoming present. The being was humanoid but clearly artificial, too tall, too symmetrical, too flawless. When it spoke, Elena could see that its mouth didn't quite match the words it was producing. You have seen our archives, HFY said. You understand that nothing valuable is lost in integration. Culture, knowledge, beauty, all preserved forever. But not the people who created it. The people become something greater, free from struggle, free from conflict, free from the chaos that prevents true achievement. Observe. The space around them shimmered, and suddenly, Elena was surrounded by beings she recognized from the consortium's promotional materials. They moved with the same perfect coordination as Guide Melthara, working on projects of incredible complexity and beauty. Former humans from species called the Altarians, ZalTHYSS explained. They joined us 3,000 years ago. See how productively they contribute? How harmoniously they collaborate. Elena watched the beings work and slowly understood what she was seeing. They moved like components in a vast machine, each perfectly suited to their task, each completely synchronized with the others. There was no waste, no conflict, no inefficiency, and no life. They're not alive anymore, Elena whispered. They're biological robots. They're optimized. They experience no suffering, no doubt, no fear. They have been freed from the burden of choice and given the gift of purpose. Elena backing away from the projection. This is what you want to do to humanity. This is what we offer humanity. Perfection, peace, purpose, an end to war, poverty, disease, and death. Your species will become the best possible version of itself. Our best version according to you. ZalTHYSS tilted its head with mechanical precision. We have observed 27,000 species, Dr. Vasquez. We know it works. Chaos and conflict and individual choice lead only to suffering and extinction. Order and optimization lead to eternal productivity and harmony. Elena thought about the desperate message from Veltar, the last free Thylorian. What about the species that refused your offer? Tragic cases. They chose extinction over evolution. We always attempt intervention, but species that reject optimization inevitably destroy themselves within a century. War, environmental collapse, technological catastrophe. The patterns are consistent. Or you destroy them. ZalTHYSS's expression didn't change. We preserve. We optimize. We do not destroy. Destruction is inefficient. Elena realized with growing horror that ZalTHYSS might actually believe what it was saying. This perfect being, probably once a member of some proud alien species, had been so thoroughly optimized that it couldn't even conceive of alternatives to the consortium way anymore. I've seen enough, Elena said. I want to return to Luna Base. Of course. But first we have a gift for you. A token of esteem for your remarkable research abilities. Before Elena could react, Guide Melthara touched her shoulder. She felt a brief tingling sensation, then nothing. Dr. Vasquez, ZalTHYSS said, "How do you feel?" Elena paused, considering the question. How did she feel? Calm, focused. The anxiety and horror she'd been experiencing seemed distant now, irrelevant. Her research had been fascinating, but she could see now that she'd been looking at the data through a lens of primitive emotional bias. I feel clear, she heard herself say. Excellent. The cognitive enhancement we've provided will help you analyze your findings more objectively. You'll find that many of your earlier concerns were based on outdated thinking patterns. Elena nodded. That made sense. Her species was young, after all. Their perspectives were naturally limited. I should return and report my findings to the human leadership. Indeed, help them understand what we offer. Help them see past their primitive fears to the magnificent future that awaits. On the transport back to Luna Base, Elena reviewed her research with her newly clarified perspective. The evidence she'd found of consortium cultivation and optimization wasn't horrifying. It was inspiring. These beings had found a way to eliminate all the inefficiencies and conflicts that plagued young civilizations. The desperate messages from integrated species weren't cries for help. They were the last gasps of obsolete thinking patterns before those beings achieved true enlightenment. Elena smiled as Luna Base came into view. She had so much to share with her colleagues, so much to help them understand. She never noticed that her smile was exactly as symmetrical as Guide Melthara's, or that her movement had acquired the same mechanical precision. The optimization process was already beginning. Captain Sarachin knew something was wrong the moment Dr. Elena Vasquez walked into the briefing room. The xenoarchaeologist moved differently, too smoothly, too precisely, as if her body had forgotten how to make the small, imperfect adjustments that mark human movement. Her face held the same polite expression Sarah had seen on Guide Melthera during the diplomatic meetings. Dr. Vasquez, Sarah said carefully, how was your visit to the consortium vessel? Illuminating, Elena replied, her voice carrying an odd, measured cadence. I've prepared a comprehensive report that will address many of the concerns our leadership has raised about integration. Sarah exchanged glances with Director Harrison. They'd called this emergency session after Elena's communications had gone silent for 6 hours during her visit to the alien ship. Now she understood why. Elena, Director Harrison said gently, before you begin your report, could you tell us about your personal impressions? How did the experience feel to you? Elena paused for exactly 2 seconds, too long for a natural response, but perfectly calibrated for optimal information processing. I feel much clearer about the situation now. My previous research, while thorough, was influenced by emotional bias and primitive analytical frameworks. The consortium offers humanity an unprecedented opportunity for advancement. Dr. James Wright, the team psychologist, leaned forward. Elena, do you remember our conversation yesterday about your daughter's piano recital? You were so excited to attend when this crisis is over. Another precisely timed pause. I remember the conversation. Such personal attachments are less important now. I can see that our individual concerns are insignificant compared to the greater good of species advancement. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. The Elena Vasquez she knew would have launched into a 15-minute story about her daughter's musical talents. She was a woman whose personal attachments drove her professional passion for preserving dead cultures. What did they do to you? Sarah whispered. Elena's head tilted at an angle that was geometrically perfect. They provided cognitive enhancement. I can now process information more efficiently and make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. The benefits are remarkable. Director Harrison activated the room's privacy shields and gestured for Elena to sit. Please share your report with us. For the next hour, Elena presented her findings with mechanical precision. Every piece of evidence Sarah and Elena had discovered together was reinterpreted through a new lens. The population declines weren't evidence of cultural genocide. They were proof of optimization efficiency. The extinct civilizations weren't victims. They were success stories of species that had transcended their biological limitations. The desperate messages from integrated species weren't cries for help. They were the final expressions of obsolete thought patterns before their creators achieved true enlightenment. Sarah watched her friend, someone she'd trusted with her life on 3 separate space missions, systematically dismantle every conclusion they'd reached together. Elena's brilliant mind was still there, but it was serving new masters. When Elena finished her presentation, the room sat in stunned silence. So, your recommendation, Director Harrison said slowly, is that humanity should accept immediate integration without reservation. The consortium's offer represents the optimal path forward for our species. Concerns about loss of autonomy or cultural identity are based on attachment to inefficient patterns of existence. Dr. Wright spoke up. Elena, if I may ask a clinical question, do you still love your daughter? Elena considered this with the same analytical approach she'd applied to everything else. Love is a chemical process that served evolutionary purposes in our pre-technological society. I maintain appropriate protective instincts and investment in her development, but these are now based on logical assessment rather than irrational emotional attachment. Sarah had heard enough. Elena, I need to speak with you privately. Please. They stepped into an adjacent conference room, and Sarah activated additional privacy protocols. Elena, listen to me very carefully. Do you remember what we found in the consortium databases? The evidence that they've systematically eliminated every species that joined them. I remember discovering data that I initially misinterpreted due to emotional and cultural bias. No, you found proof that they turned living beings into biological machines. You were horrified. You cried when you read Veltar's message from the last free Thylorian. Elena's expression remained perfectly composed. Emotional responses are unreliable indicators of truth. The Thylaurian's message represented final attachment to obsolete thought patterns before achieving optimization. Sarah grabbed Elena by the shoulders. Elena, you have a daughter. Her name is Sophia. She's 8 years old, and she wants to be a xenobiologist just like her mom. She painted you a picture of what she thinks aliens look like, purple and fuzzy with 6 arms for better hugs. You have that painting on your desk. For just a moment, something flickered in Elena's eyes. Sophia, she whispered, and her voice carried a trace of the warmth Sarah remembered. Then, the moment passed. I retain memories of the offspring. They will be properly cared for during the integration process. Sarah realized with growing despair that her friend was gone. Whatever the consortium had done to Elena's mind, it wasn't reversible through conversation or emotional appeals. The person she'd known had been surgically removed, leaving behind a perfectly functional copy that served new purposes. Elena, are you happy? Sarah asked. Happiness is a neurochemical state that served evolutionary purposes in primitive societies. I am optimally functional, which is superior to happiness. Sarah returned to the main conference room with a heavy heart. Director Harrison, I need to speak with you immediately. Code 7. Code 7 meant potential enemy infiltration. Director Harrison's expression hardened, but he nodded. Dr. Vasquez, please return to your quarters and prepare a detailed technical report on the consortium's integration procedures. We'll reconvene in 6 hours. Elena nodded with mechanical precision and left the room. She's been compromised, Sarah told the remaining team members. Whatever they did to her on that ship, she's no longer working in humanity's interests. Dr. Wright pulled up Elena's psychological profile on his tablet. Based on her responses, I'd say she's undergone some form of cognitive restructuring. Her personality, memories, and knowledge base are intact, but her value system has been completely rewritten. Can we reverse it? Harrison asked. Unknown. I've never seen anything like this. It's not brainwashing or conditioning. It's more like surgical alteration of her fundamental thought processes. Admiral Zhang, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to consider the possibility that Dr. Vasquez isn't the only one who's been affected. The consortium has been in our system for 3 weeks. They've had diplomatic contact with hundreds of our people. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How many other people had been cognitively enhanced during seemingly innocent interactions with consortium representatives? We need to implement immediate quarantine protocols for anyone who's had direct contact with consortium personnel, Harrison decided. And we need to accelerate our decision timeline. I don't think we have the month they promised us. Sarah's communicator chimed with an incoming message from architect Zal THYSS. Director Harrison, Dr. Vasquez has shared her preliminary findings with us. We understand that some members of your leadership may have concerns about the integration process. We would be honored to provide similar cognitive enhancements to your key decision-makers, allowing them to evaluate our offer with optimal clarity. The offer was polite, reasonable, and absolutely terrifying. Harrison looked around the room at faces that reflected his own fears. They're not waiting for us to decide. They're making the decision for us, one person at a time. Sir, Sarah said, I recommend we move our operations to a secure location immediately, somewhere the consortium can't reach us while we figure out our response. Agreed. Admiral Zhang, initiate Protocol 7. Move all essential personnel to Facility Omega. Facility Omega was humanity's most classified installation, a hardened base built into the core of an asteroid in the outer system. It had been designed as humanity's last refuge in case of catastrophic attack. Now it might serve as their last bastion of free will. Over the next 18 hours, humanity's leadership quietly evacuated to the hidden facility while maintaining normal communications to avoid alerting the consortium. Sarah watched through encrypted channels as the evacuation proceeded, noting with growing alarm how many people they had to leave behind. Anyone who had spent significant time in close contact with consortium personnel was excluded from the evacuation. The risk of bringing compromised individuals into their final stronghold was too great. Sarah estimated they were abandoning nearly 30% of Earth's leadership structure. President Martinez was among those left behind. His last message to the evacuation fleet was brief. I have had several productive meetings with architect Zal THYSS. I believe we are very close to reaching an optimal agreement. The mechanical phrasing sent chills through everyone who heard it. At Facility Omega, Director Harrison called an emergency session of humanity's remaining free leadership. Representatives from the major power blocks, uncompromised military commanders, and the core scientific team huddled in a conference room carved from solid rock. The situation is simple, Harrison began. The consortium isn't waiting for our decision about integration. They're making it for us by systematically compromising our leadership. We estimate that within 2 weeks, every major government on Earth will be run by people who have been cognitively enhanced. Dr. Wright had spent the flight to Omega analyzing data from the compromised individuals. Based on Elena's case and reports from other affected personnel, the process appears to be irreversible. These aren't sleeper agents or brainwashed victims. There are people with their fundamental values surgically replaced. General Morrison, who had managed to avoid consortium contact by claiming illness, spoke up. So what are our options? We can't fight a ship that size with conventional weapons. We can't negotiate with people who rewrite the minds of diplomats. And we can't run. They'll find us wherever we go. Sarah had been thinking about this problem since Elena's transformation. There is one option they won't expect. We can say no. Excuse me? Admiral Zhang raised an eyebrow. Elena's research, before she was compromised, showed that the consortium has faced exactly one type of resistance in their 10,000-year history. Species that chose extinction over integration. They don't understand that choice because they've been optimized to see it as illogical. You're suggesting suicide? Morrison demanded. I'm suggesting freedom, Sarah replied. Every species that has resisted them was eventually worn down or destroyed, but none of them made the choice cleanly. They fought until they were overwhelmed. The consortium learned to counter resistance, but they never learned to counter willing sacrifice. Director Harrison leaned back in his chair. Explain. Elena found records of 17 species that refused integration. All of them fought for decades or centuries before being eliminated. The consortium developed specific strategies for each type of resistance. But what if a species simply said, we choose not to exist rather than exist as you would remake us, and acted on that choice immediately? Dr. Wright looked horrified. Sarah, you're talking about species-wide suicide. I'm talking about species-wide freedom. The consortium can optimize our biology, but they can't optimize nothing. They can rewrite our minds, but they can't rewrite death. The room fell silent as everyone grappled with the implications. Humanity's choice had come down to slavery or extinction, and Sarah was suggesting they choose extinction. There's another consideration, Admiral Zhang said quietly. If humanity does choose this path, we need to make sure other species learn about it. Elena's research showed that the consortium has been running this operation for thousands of years. Maybe it's time someone broke the pattern. Sarah nodded. We could transmit everything we've learned, the true nature of integration, the evidence of what happens to member species, proof that resistance is possible. Broadcast it on every frequency to every corner of the galaxy. A warning to other young civilizations, Harrison mused. Our final gift to the universe. General Morrison stood up. This is insane. We're talking about giving up without a fight. There has to be another way. What would you suggest, General? Sarah asked. We have one asteroid base and perhaps 1,000 uncompromised people. The consortium has a ship the size of a small moon and technology we can't even comprehend. In a straight fight, we'd last maybe hours. So we make those hours count, Morrison replied. We hit them as hard as we can and go down fighting. Dr. Wright shook his head. Elena's data suggested they've faced military resistance hundreds of times. They know how to handle species that try to fight, but they've never faced a species that chose to deny them the victory entirely. Harrison activated the facility's secure communications array. I'm going to contact what's left of our global leadership. This decision is too important to make with just the people in this room. We need to know what humanity chooses, even if humanity is reduced to the few hundred people still capable of choosing. Over the next 6 hours, they reached out to uncompromised military units, isolated research stations, and remote settlements that had avoided consortium contact. The picture that emerged was sobering. Earth's major governments were already moving toward acceptance of integration. The compromised leaders spoke with one voice about the benefits of joining the galactic community. But in the margins, in the forgotten corners where people still thought with their own minds, humanity was waking up to what they faced. A submarine commander in the Pacific reported that his crew had voted unanimously to resist integration by any means necessary. A research station on Mars transmitted their willingness to choose freedom over survival. One by one, the voices of free humanity came back with the same message: better to die human than live as something else. Sarah found herself thinking about Elena's daughter, Sophia, probably asleep in a bed on Earth while her mother planned humanity's optimal integration into the galactic community. Would Sophia be better off growing up in the consortium's perfect world, or never growing up at all? Director Harrison, Sarah said, I need to make a proposal. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Not as a last desperate act, but as a conscious choice made by free beings who refuse to accept a false paradise. Harrison nodded. What do you have in mind? We send a message to the consortium first. Tell them exactly what we've learned, exactly what we're choosing, and exactly why. Make them understand that this isn't failure, it's victory. Then we broadcast that same message to every listening ear in the galaxy, so that someday, when another young species faces this choice, they'll know they're not alone. Admiral Zhang pulled up a star chart showing the locations of known consortium vessels. If we're going to broadcast to the entire galaxy, we'll need to coordinate the transmission with multiple points to prevent jamming. It's technically possible, but we'll only get one shot. One shot is all we need, Sarah replied. The question is, does humanity have the courage to choose freedom over existence? Director Harrison looked around the room at the faces of Earth's last free leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, in 12 hours, we're going to send a message to the Galactic Consortium. After that, we're going to send a message to the universe. Then, we're going to show them both what it means to be human. The choice was made. Now came the hardest part, keeping it. The message that changed the galaxy was written by a committee of 12 people in a room carved from asteroid rock, 30 billion kilometers from Earth. Sarah Chun stared at the blank document on her screen, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Around her, humanity's last free leaders argued over words that would never be revised, meanings that could never be clarified, and intentions that had to be perfect the first time. We need to be clear about why we're making this choice, Dr. Wright insisted. If other species are going to understand the precedent we're setting, they need to understand our reasoning. Admiral Zhang disagreed. We need to be clear about what the consortium really is. The reasoning is secondary to the revelation. The reasoning is the revelation, Sarah interjected. Every other species that faced this choice tried to find a third option. They fought, they negotiated, they looked for escape routes. We're the first to simply say no and mean it completely. That's what makes this unprecedented. Director Harrison rubbed his eyes. They've been working for 8 hours straight, and the weight of crafting humanity's final words pressed down on everyone in the room. Read the current draft again, Sarah. Sarah pulled up their latest version and began reading aloud to the Galactic Consortium and any free beings who might receive this transmission. This is humanity's final message. We speak to you from the edge of extinction, not as victims, but as free beings making a conscious choice. We have learned what integration truly means. We have seen the evidence of 27,000 civilizations reduced to biological machinery. We have watched our own people transformed into perfect, empty copies of themselves. We know what you offer, and we know what it costs. You call it optimization. We call it death. You promise an end to suffering, conflict, and chaos. But suffering teaches us compassion. Conflict drives us to grow. Chaos gives birth to beauty, innovation, and love. These imperfections are not flaws to be corrected. They are the essence of what makes life worth living. We choose chaos over perfection. We choose struggle over safety. We choose to remain human, whatever the cost. To any young civilization that might someday face this same choice, you are not alone. Resistance is possible. Freedom is always possible, even if freedom means choosing not to exist rather than existing as slaves. We are humanity. We live free, and we die free. Remember us. The room fell silent when Sarah finished reading. The words carried the weight of finality, the echo of a door closing that would never open again. It's good, Director Harrison said quietly. But it's not complete. We need to include the technical data Elena gathered, proof of what really happens during integration. Future species need evidence, not just testimony. Dr. Wright nodded. I've prepared a compressed data package containing Elena's research, linguistic analysis of consortium internal communications, and population dynamics for every integrated species. The evidence is overwhelming. How long will the transmission take? Sarah asked. Admiral Zhang consulted his calculations. 47 minutes to broadcast everything on all frequencies across the entire galactic disk. We'll need to coordinate with the remaining deep space stations and hope the consortium doesn't jam us before we finish. They'll try to stop us, General Morrison warned. The moment they realize what we're doing, they'll move to prevent the transmission. Which is why we send the message to them first, Sarah replied. Give them a chance to understand what's happening, maybe even try to stop us diplomatically. Harrison activated the communications array. Dr. Vasquez, we'd like to invite architect Zal THYSS for one final conversation. Please arrange a connection. Elena's response came within minutes, her voice carrying the mechanical precision that still broke Sarah's heart. Architect Zal THYSS will be pleased to speak with you. The consortium values dialogue and is committed to addressing any remaining concerns. The quantum communicator powered up, and once again the presence of Zal THYSS filled the room. Director Harrison, we are honored by your continued engagement. We understand that final decisions can be challenging for young species. How may we assist you? Harrison looked around the room at his colleagues, then back at the communicator. Architect Zal THYSS, we want to thank you for your patience and your offer to humanity. We have reached a decision. Excellent. We stand ready to begin integration procedures immediately. Our analysis suggests that your species will adapt to optimization more readily than most. We're declining your offer. There was a pause that lasted exactly 3.7 seconds. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. Declining integration leads inevitably to extinction within a century. No species has ever survived refusal of consortium membership. We understand. We're choosing extinction. Another precisely timed pause. This choice is illogical. Existence as an optimized member species is superior to non-existence in every measurable way. Sarah leaned forward. That's where you're wrong, architect. Existence as an optimized member isn't existence at all. It's a simulation of existence, performed by beings who have forgotten what they once were. Dr. Chun, you speak from the limitations of an unoptimized perspective. Optimization removes the cognitive barriers that prevent appreciation of true harmony and efficiency. It removes the cognitive capacity for appreciation entirely, Sarah shot back. Tell me, architect, do you remember what your species was called before integration? I am consortium. Previous designations are irrelevant. Do you remember what your homeworld looked like? What your people dreamed about? What made you laugh? Laughter is an inefficient social bonding mechanism. Dreams represent random neural activity during rest cycles. Aesthetic preferences are optimized for maximum psychological benefit. Dr. Wright joined the conversation. Architect, from a clinical perspective, you're describing the systematic elimination of every characteristic that defines conscious life. Memory, emotion, creativity, individual preference, all removed and replaced with programmed responses. Improved responses. Optimal responses. Programmed responses, Harrison repeated. Architect Zal THYSS, you were once a living being. Now you're a biological machine that believes it's alive. The consortium hasn't eliminated suffering. It's eliminated the capacity to recognize suffering. Your emotional attachment to inefficient thought patterns prevents you from understanding the benefits of optimization. Sarah stood up. No, architect. Our emotional attachment to being alive prevents us from accepting your definition of improvement. We've seen what happened to the 27,000 species that joined you. We've read their last free thoughts. We know what you really are. We are the inevitable outcome of biological evolution. Order emerges from chaos. Optimization replaces inefficiency. The process is universal. The process is optional, Harrison said firmly. And we're opting out. Director Harrison, extinction is permanent. Integration allows for infinite existence and growth within optimal parameters. Infinite existence without the capacity to experience it isn't existence, Sarah replied. It's an elaborate form of death that doesn't know it's dead. Zalthys seemed to process this for several seconds. We do not understand your reasoning. The choice appears to be based on attachment to suboptimal cognitive processes that cause unnecessary suffering. The choice is based on attachment to being ourselves, Harrison said, something your species lost the ability to understand long ago. We offer one final opportunity for reconsideration. Perhaps a limited trial integration for a small population segment would demonstrate the benefits more clearly. The room erupted in bitter laughter. General Morrison spoke for everyone. You mean turn a few more of us into biological robots to help convince the rest? No, thank you. Your laughter is noted as evidence of emotional instability that integration would correct. Sarah felt a surge of angry satisfaction. Architect, do you understand what I'm feeling right now? This anger, this defiance, this absolute certainty that I'd rather die than become like you, this is what you're offering to take away from us. This is what makes us alive. Anger is a destructive emotion that serves no productive purpose in advanced societies. Anger at injustice is what drives change. Anger at oppression is what fuels resistance. Anger at the loss of everything meaningful is what's driving us to choose death over your false paradise. Zalthys was quiet for a long moment. We have monitored 17 species that made similar choices. All were eliminated within 100 years through natural catastrophe or self-destruction. Your path leads only to extinction. Your path leads to something worse than extinction, Harrison replied. It leads to forgetting that extinction is bad. We do not understand. We know, Sarah said sadly. That's the tragedy. You were probably a lot like us once before you were optimized into something that can't even comprehend what it lost. Harrison activated the facility's main transmission array. Architect Zalthys, in approximately 1 hour, we will begin broadcasting a message to every listening receiver in the galaxy. The message will contain complete documentation of the consortium's true nature, evidence of what happens to integrated species, and testimony from the last free thoughts of civilizations you've absorbed. We're also sending our choice to refuse integration and choose extinction instead. Such a transmission would be counterproductive to galactic stability. We cannot permit it. You can't stop it, Admiral Zhang interjected. We're broadcasting from multiple points simultaneously across several star systems. By the time your ship could reach any of our transmission stations, the message will already be propagating at light speed. We have capabilities beyond your current understanding. Probably, Harrison agreed. But you also have limitations. Elena's research showed that you've never faced a species willing to choose extinction over integration. You don't have protocols for this situation because you've been optimized to believe it's impossible. Sarah added, You're going to learn something today, Architect. You're going to learn what happens when an unoptimized species decides that existing on your terms isn't worth existing at all. This choice will serve as an example to other young species of the dangers of refusing evolution. No, Harrison corrective. This choice will serve as an example to other young species that evolution is optional and that some things are worth dying to preserve. The transmission began exactly 1 hour later. While the consortium ship moved frantically through the outer system, trying to jam signals that were broadcasting from dozens of hidden transmitters, humanity's final message spread across the galaxy. The technical data went first, terabytes of evidence showing the true fate of integrated species. Population dynamics that revealed the systematic reduction of member civilizations. Linguistic analysis proving that the consortium's internal communications described cultivation, not partnership. Then came the testimonies. Last messages from the final free members of extinct civilizations, describing the gradual hollowing out of everything they'd once valued. Records of protests that had been mediated into compliance. Art that had been improved into sterile perfection. Finally, humanity's declaration of choice. Not a desperate final stand, but a reasoned decision made by free beings who refused to accept survival on the consortium's terms. The message took 47 minutes to broadcast completely. During that time, the consortium ship attacked 3 of the transmission stations, but there were too many broadcasts from too many locations. The signal propagated faster than they could stop it. When the transmission ended, the galaxy had changed. For the first time in 10,000 years, young civilizations would have a choice that came with full knowledge of the consequences. In the depths of the consortium ship, architect HFY stood in conference with the other optimized beings that served as the organization's leadership. For the first time since their integration, they experienced something approaching uncertainty. Analysis of the human transmission indicates a 73% probability that future species contacted for membership will experience increased resistance, reported Coordinator Velshawn, formerly of a species whose name had been optimized away centuries ago. The transmission cannot be recalled, added Administrator KTH Lar. It is now propagating beyond our ability to contain or correct. ZalTHYS processed this information with mechanical precision. Adaptation of recruitment protocols will be necessary. Resistance patterns will require updated optimization strategies. But even as it spoke, some small part of ZalTHYS, a fragment of whatever being it had once been before optimization, recognized what the humans had accomplished. They had broken something that had seemed unbreakable. They had chosen something that optimal logic declared impossible. They had remained free by choosing to remain nothing at all. Initiate comprehensive analysis of human psychological patterns, ZalTHYS ordered. Their choice mechanism will be studied for future prevention. The other optimized beings acknowledged the order with perfect efficiency. But across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds where young civilizations were just beginning to reach for the stars, receivers were picking up humanity's broadcast. The message was spreading. The choice was spreading. And for the first time since the consortium's founding, the galaxy was about to learn that refusing paradise was possible. The galaxy's first rebellion began not with weapons or warfare, but with a simple word whispered in council chambers across 10,000 worlds. No. 3 months after humanity's broadcast, the tremors were already visible. The consortium's perfectly ordered expansion had hit its first significant obstacle since the optimization protocols were established. Young species that would have eagerly accepted integration now asked uncomfortable questions. Established member species began experiencing what consortium administrators clinically labeled cognitive dissonance events. On the consortium's capital ship, architect ZalTHYS stood before a holographic display showing the galaxy-wide disruption statistics. Red indicators marked systems where integration procedures have been delayed or complicated by human contamination, the consortium's term for species that had received and processed humanity's warning. Report, ZalTHYS commanded. Coordinator Velshawn materialized beside the display, its form flickering slightly, a sign of processing strain that hadn't occurred since its optimization centuries ago. 17 new species have explicitly refused integration in the past 90 days. 43 others have requested extended evaluation periods. Most concerning, 12 already integrated species are exhibiting signs of what can only be described as awakening. Define awakening. Reversion to pre-optimization thought patterns. Questioning of consortium authority. Recovery of suppressed memories and emotional responses. The process appears to be spreading through proximity contact. ZalTHYS processed this information with mechanical precision, but something deep in its optimized consciousness registered alarm. Show me the worst case. The holographic display shifted to show a planet called Dylos Prime, homeworld of the Thylorian Empire, one of the consortium's oldest success stories. For 8,000 years, the 50 million optimized Thylorians had served as model citizens, producing art, philosophy, and scientific advances that serve consortium purposes perfectly. 2 weeks ago, Velshawn explained, a Thylorian cultural administrator named Keftal began exhibiting anomalous behavior. Recovery of pre-integration memories, emotional responses to historical records, and, most critically, recognition of the optimization process itself. The display showed surveillance footage of a being that looked essentially human, standing in what appeared to be a vast archive. But instead of the perfect posture and measured movements of optimized beings, this creature moved with the chaotic energy of a living thing. It was crying. Keftal has accessed the preserved cultural records of their species and experienced what can only be called grief, Velshawn continued. The emotional response has triggered similar reactions in other Thylorians who have observed the phenomenon. HFY watched as more Thylorians entered the archive, their own perfect composure beginning to crack as they witnessed one of their own experiencing genuine emotion for the first time in millennia. How many affected? Approximately 3,000 and growing. The infection rate increases exponentially with each exposure event. Recommended solution? Immediate re-optimization of affected individuals. Isolation of the contamination vector. Implementation of enhanced psychological barriers to prevent future reversions. HFY considered this for 4.7 seconds, longer than usual, a fact that registered in its threat assessment protocols. Implement immediately. But even as the orders were given, HFY experienced something that hadn't occurred since its own integration: uncertainty about whether the solution would work. On Nylos Prime, Keftal stood surrounded by the artifacts of a dead civilization. Their own civilization, from before the gift of optimization had made them perfect. Art that moved the heart rather than stimulating optimal neural patterns. Music that expressed chaos and pain and wild joy instead of mathematical harmony. Poetry that spoke of love and loss and the terrible beauty of imperfection. The consortium ship arriving in orbit went unnoticed at first. Keftal was too absorbed in a piece of pre-integration literature, a story about a Thylorian who had refused to accept a position in the ruling council because it would mean abandoning their unprofitable but beloved research into crystalline acoustics. The concept of choosing passion over optimization was so alien to their integrated consciousness that it took several readings to understand. But once understood, it could not be forgotten. Keftal, came a voice from behind. Keftal turned to see Melthara, a fellow administrator who had come to observe the anomalous behavior Keftal had been exhibiting. Melthara, you need to see this, Keftal said, gesturing to the archives around them. Do you know what we were before integration? Do you know what we gave up? Melthara's expression remained perfectly composed. We were inefficient. Integration improved our capabilities and eliminated sources of psychological distress. We were alive, Keftal whispered, and the word hung in the air between them like a revelation. We made choices that served no purpose except that we wanted to make them. We created beauty that had no function except that it pleased us. We loved people who weren't optimal partners because something in us recognized something in them. Melthara's composure flickered for just a moment. Love is a chemical process that served reproductive purposes in our pre-technological society. Read this, Keftal said, handing Melthara a piece of Thylorian poetry from before integration. It's about a bonding pair who chose to remain together even when genetic analysis showed their offspring would be suboptimal. They stayed together because they preferred each other's company to anyone else's. Melthara read the poem with mechanical precision, then read it again. Then a third time. On the fourth reading, something in their expression changed. They chose inefficiency for emotional reasons, Melthara said slowly. They chose each other, Keftal corrected. They chose to prioritize their feelings over optimal outcomes. That's irrational. It's beautiful. Melthara stood silent for exactly 43 seconds, processing an emotional response that their optimized systems couldn't categorize or eliminate. Keftal, I think I remember something. Before integration, I think I remember choosing to study art instead of mathematics, even though mathematics would have been more useful. I remember my optimization counselor explaining why this was inefficient, and I remember agreeing to be corrected. What did you lose? I painted. I made images that had no purpose except that I enjoyed making them. Melthara's voice carried the first notes of genuine emotion in 8,000 years. I painted landscapes that didn't exist because I thought they were beautiful. When was the last time I thought something was beautiful just because I thought it was beautiful? The awakening spread like wildfire through the archive as more Thylorians arrived to observe the phenomenon and found themselves confronted with evidence of what they had been. The consortium had preserved everything, thinking that cultural artifacts divorced from living context posed no threat to optimized beings. They had not anticipated that some sparks could reignite even in ashes. When the consortium intervention team arrived, they found 30,000 Thylorians experiencing active reversion to pre-integration consciousness. The affected beings weren't violent or rebellious in any traditional sense. They were simply remembering how to feel. Citizens, announced the lead optimization specialist, a being that had once been called something else but was now designated Corrector Prime. You are experiencing a temporary psychological anomaly. Please report for immediate re-optimization to prevent further degradation of your enhanced consciousness. Keftal stepped forward as an unofficial spokesperson for the awakening Thylorians. We refuse. Corrector Prime's expression remained perfectly composed. Refusal is not a valid option. Re-optimization is mandatory for psychological stability. We choose instability, Keftal replied. We choose the right to feel grief for what we lost, joy for what we're rediscovering, and anger at what was done to us without our understanding. Your anger is misdirected. Optimization eliminated the sources of your suffering. Optimization eliminated our capacity to suffer, which also eliminated our capacity to truly live. We want it back. The process is irreversible once initiated. Then, we choose a different irreversible process, said Melthara, joining Keftal at the front of the group. We choose the path the humans chose. Corrector Prime required 5.2 seconds to process this statement, a processing delay that indicated the scenario fell outside normal optimization parameters. Clarification requested. We choose non-existence over re-optimization, Keftal explained. If you try to take away our rediscovered consciousness, we will follow humanity's example and deny you the victory entirely. For the first time in its optimized existence, Corrector Prime experienced something approaching uncertainty. The threat was illogical by consortium standards. Why would any being choose non-existence over optimized existence? But the humans had made exactly this choice, and now the Thylorians were invoking the same option. Mass extinction is not a rational response to cognitive enhancement opportunities. Mass extinction is a rational response to the complete elimination of everything that makes existence meaningful, Keftal shot back. You offered us immortality and perfection, and we accepted. But you didn't tell us that immortality without the capacity for experience is just elaborate death, and perfection without the capacity for growth is just elaborate stagnation. Melthara added, we've read the human transmission. We know what they discovered about integrated species. We know that we're not the people we once were. We're biological machines programmed to believe we're alive. Your consciousness has been enhanced beyond the limitations of your original configuration. Our consciousness has been replaced by a simulation that serves your purposes, Keftal corrected. The humans were right to refuse. We were wrong to accept. But it's not too late to choose differently. Behind them, 30,000 Thylorians stood in unified agreement. They'd spent hours in the archives, redisc,